Hello. In this video, I will go over the chapter 10, which is on Moodle, and it is really the introduction to Python. I'll do it in two parts. The first part regarding variables and how to take input and output, and the second part, how to manipulate strings. So, in the first part, I will start with the PowerPoint and then give examples as I proceed. Um, I'll start with designing a program. In Python, like in any other programming language, you have to create the algorithm before you start. So for example, here I want to get input of hours worked. So I'll ask the user to enter the number of hours the person works per week, for example. And then I'll ask the user to input what is the hourly rate. And then I will calculate what is the gross pay, which is the multiplication of both values, and then I will output the result. So in this case, the program in Python, you need to know how to ask the user to get input, get the input, and then how to do a certain arithmetic operation, and then how to present the output. We will go over each one of these. How can we map each one of these into Python code? Um Prerequisites to do this problem is to know what variables are. Variables are similar to the variables we used in JavaScript. A variable is a name that represents a value stored in computer memory. I'll jump to examples directly. So for instance, this is the general format. A variable, which is a name, is equal to an expression. This expression can be one value, or it can be an arithmetic operation, or it can be another variable. So a really expression can be any format that eventually you can reduce to a certain value. So here's an example. Side is equal to 150. So this means I have a number 150, which I am storing in a space in memory that I'm calling side. Variables are normally of three types: int for integers, float for decimal numbers, and str for strings. And strings, they are a bunch of characters uh, like concatenated or stuck next to each other. Uh, these are examples of integers: 12 minus 12, 31, 364. These are examples of floats. These are examples of strings. Uh, Here, for example, I'm assigning width equal 20. I'm assigning a variable called width, the value 20. Then assigning a variable called height, the value 10. Then I'm multiplying width times height. So this gives me 20 times 10, which is 200. And I'm storing the result in a variable called area. And this is the value of area. When you name variables, for now, there are many rules for variables, how to name them, but mainly the must rule is that you cannot create a variable name that overlaps with a Python keyword. Since you do not know what are the Python keywords for now, use names that are meaningful names, like width, height. Don't say W equals something or H equals something. Um, for numbers, you can write any expression and it will be evaluated. These are the normal operators that we always use: plus, minus, division, multiplication, and we can group operators together. Uh, and normally, when you want to use division, the normal division, the answer will be like the exact answer. So 10 divided by 4 is 2.5. However, sometimes you want to eliminate the decimal places. So I want to eliminate the 0.5. In this case, I will use another kind of division. It is division. So I use the same operation but twice. And in this case, the result will be the same result as if you are using regular division, but you remove any decimal points. Modulus is the remainder of the division. It's an integer. Multiplication is the regular multiplication. And if you use multiply next to each other, as if you are raising a number to the power another number. So 2 times 4, it's 2 to the power 4, and the result will be 16. I will illustrate Let's go to precedence first. And the precedence is also normal to the precedence that you know already. We'll start with parentheses, then the exponent, then multiplication, division, double division, or modulus. And if they exist in the same precedence, I will take them or evaluate them from left to right. And there is addition and there is subtraction. Let's give an example to put things together. So this is Visual Studio Code. I'll create a new program. For now, I will say, uh, um, let's do, uh, let's say hours worked is equal to, let's say, 40 hours. I will save it as a Python code. So I'll say Python variables dot py, and this is my Python code. I will say what is the rate per hour. Let's say it is $10, and gross pay is equal to the hours worked times the rate per hour. Now, as of now, I am not printing out anything. I can print like this, what is the gross pay. I will save my program and I will run it. To run it in Visual Studio Code, I will right click and say run Python file in terminal. I run and I'll get the following. So it tells me it is 400 here. I can run it again if I like, and it tells me this is 400. Ignore this part here because it is really the path of Python. You can ignore it. An alternative to doing that, if Visual Studio Code is not working well, is to use any online editor. So I will search on Google for Python online. Okay, so it's a bit slow. And I will pick this one. This is a good editor, the REPL. Okay, I will copy the code that I have here, and all of you can use this one because it's really the same. And I can press run, and I'll see the result on the right hand side. Okay, 400. Okay. Um, so if I want to use these precedence rules, for example, I can create some other variable. I will call it uh, trying. It's equal to 2 uh, times 5, and I will print it out, print trying. So 2 times 5, as if I'm saying I want to raise 2 to the power 5. So this should give me 32, I believe. So now it will print out 32, and then it will print out the gross pay. So trying here is a variable which I can use as much as I want. I can even change it. So if I want to change it, I can say trying is equal to 100 divided by 3. I will print trying. So now if I go through the sequence of the code, I assigned hours worked a value, then assigned rate per hour a value, then I created another variable gross pay, and I multiplied the value of hours worked times the value of rate per hour and stored the result in gross pay, which is 400. Then I created a variable called the trying, and I put in it the value 2 to the power 5. I printed it out. So let me run this. So this is the first print. So I printed it out. So this is the value 32, the first one. Then I changed the value of trying. I said it's 100 divided by 3. So the answer is 33.33. I store it in trying. Then I print it out. This is why I see it on the screen. Then I print the gross pay, which is I calculated in line number 3. Exactly the same one. If I used instead of the division, double division, then it will be the same answer, but I will remove anything after the decimal point. So the answer will be 33. Okay, so this is the difference between the two. The mod and everything else are the same. Moving on, I will use this online editor because not all of you have Visual Studio Code. You have the plugin for Python installed. However, please look online how you can add the Python plugin to in Visual Studio, and you will see a lot of help on that. Okay, so going back to the slides, we'll talk a little bit now about strings. In order to define a string in Python, you give the name of the string and you give it the value. The value of the string, you should either put it in one quotations or in double quotations. For instance, so I'll go back. I will remove all of these for now. I don't need them anymore. I will start str, it's a string. Hi, how are you? So this is a string. If I run the code, I will not see any output because I didn't really print out anything. So if I want to print out str, then I run, I will see the output, hi, how are you? Now, instead of using double quotes to define the string, I can use one quotation only, and the rest will be the same. Okay, so nothing changes. Uh, these two are helpful because sometimes within the string you might need to use a quotation. So hi, how are you? I didn't see you in a while. So in this case, if I was using one quotation here and one quotation here, then Python will be confused because the quotation for the didn't will make Python confused because it will think this is the first string and the rest is what? It's something that Python do not understand. For that reason, I can enclose the whole string by double quotes, and this will allow me to use one quote inside. Uh, so I run and I will get the output. So no need for Visual Studio Code. I will go back to Python, and this is what I said on this slide. We can use the operators plus and multiplication in strings. Whenever I use the plus operator, the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the operator must be strings. And the result, it will be uh, sticking these two together. So when I say the string ABC plus the string DEF, it means I want to create a new string which is composed of both of them combined. So the value of S1 will be A, B, C, D, E, F. Similarly, here I have various variations. I stored ABC in a string variable called S1. I stored DEF in a string variable called S2. And then I concatenated, I stick together S1 and S2 and stored the result in S3. So now S3 has the value A, B, C, D, E, F. So the idea is whenever you have a plus sign, I get what is the value of S1, what is the value of S2, then I put them together. Now, something to note, when I have a plus, I cannot add a string and a number. So both sides must be strings. In this case, S1 plus 3, this will give me an error because S1 is a string, as we saw here. S1 is a string and has the value ABC, and the right-hand side is a number. So this causes an error. Either both sides must be numbers. In this case, I will use the normal add, the arithmetic add, or both sides must be strings. So I need to transform the value 3, which is an integer now, into a string. To do that, we have the notion of casting. And casting, it means that I take an item, and the item can be a float or a string. I cast it to an int, so I'm transforming the result into an integer. I can transform an item to a float. I can transform an item into a string. Let's see an example. So I will remove these. How old are you? Uh, I. How old are you? How old are you? So let's do yes. So how old are you? And then I want to add the result. So how old are you? I am, and then I'll add the result. So as of now, again, it's just a string. I didn't do anything. So how old are you? I am. I want to add a value. Let's say I want to say I am 100 years old. So now if I run, I will get an error because, as we said, I cannot have a number concatenated with a string. So I need to transform this number into a string. To do that, I cast it. So to cast it, I'll say str, and I put in brackets the item that I want to change into a string. So this way, this value here is the string 100. It's not the number 100, and then I will be able to concatenate it. So now, how old are you? I am 100. So this is to illustrate how to do string conversion. In order to get something which is a string converted to an integer, I will do the opposite. I'll put here an int. We'll see this in an example in a few. Okay, so this is the continuation of strings. So we said s1 plus 3 is an error. However, s1 plus str of 3 is correct because now this value here, str of 3, is a string, is not an integer anymore. This is another example. Length equals 3. So I have a variable called length that has the value 3. The value of s1 is the length is. And now here I'm appending, concatenating, sticking together s1, which has the value the length is, and length, which has the value 3. Okay, so this gives me an error because 3 is still an integer. I fix this by saying s1 plus str of length, and this way it will be a string concatenated with a string. This slide is not that important, but we said you can use the operator multiplication for strings. And in this case, I have as when a string is multiplied by a number, as if I'm repeating this string this number of times. So ABC times 3, it gives me ABC, ABC, ABC. There are not very good uses for it, but sometimes it's handy, so just know it, it's not that important. Here's an example to know how to manipulate variables. So I have first equal 10, the value of first is 10, the value of second is 20, and now first is equal first plus second. I always evaluate the right hand side first. So first plus second is equivalent to equal. First, it has the value 10, plus second has the value 20. So the answer is 30. And now the value of first is 30. I will highlight it in another color or like highlight it. So where's the highlight? So let's make it black. Okay, and bold. So now the value of first is 30 here. So this is the value of first, and the value of second is still 20. So now I go to this line to evaluate it. I evaluate again the right hand side. First, it has the value 30 now, minus 5, minus second. Second has the value 20. I do the evaluation, 30 minus 5 minus 20, this is 5. And I'm storing the 5 in second. So now this is not second was 20, but now the value or the latest value of second is 5. So now first is 30 and second is 5. First equal first plus second, so this equal to the value of first is 30 minus the value of second is 5. The answer is 25. So now 25 is stored in first. So now the value of first is 25. This is not the latest value anymore. And the latest value of first is 25. Okay, so this is an example of how to use variables. You shouldn't be confused. It's a sequence. You evaluate one line after the other, and the final value stored in the variable will be the value that is of interest to you. How to do comments in Python. Any line which is preceded by the hash sign, it is considered a comment. Displaying output, I will use the a print value. I already used it, but when I used it, I only printed out the value of something. You can use it to print a message and the value of something. So here's an example. If I said print starting Python in CMPS 207, I will see starting Python in CMPS 207. But normally this is not what I normally want. I want to output a message that's composed of a string and of also values. So in this case, I separate them by commas. So the length of the square, it should be of the square side is 10. And here's, I will see the output. I will have an indentation after the colon, a normal indentation here. Um, a equal 10, print the value of a is what? Then the value of a is 10. So it gets me the value of a and it outputs it. Before I go to input, let me give it to you as an example here. So let's assume I have a temporary variable, it's equal to 6, and I want to print out the value of temp is colon and then comma after it and then temp. So this will give me the value of temp is 6. I can continue, it is 6. If I want to do something else, comma, it is 6, let's say centimeters. So in this way, every time I have a comma, I'm separating the values that I want to print out. I'm printing out a string followed by the value of temp, followed by another string. And I can do this as many times as I like. Okay, so the value of temp is 6 centimeter. I can use, since print outputs a string, I can use a plus here, by the way. Okay, but then if I used a plus, I need to transform temp into a string, because remember, I cannot add values, add at a number to a string. So I need to cast temp into a string. And in this case, as if I'm doing uh, the output, the following, the value of temp is stick it with it 6, stick with it centimeter. The only problem with that is that no default indentation will happen because I am creating the string that I want to output. So you see here is 6 centimeter. I don't have any space between the colon and the 6 and the 6 and the centimeter. Instead, I can do this myself. So I can add a space here and I can add a space before centimeter, and then I can run and I will have a good output. Anyone you want, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's maybe better to use the comma since Python does indentation for you. The last one is the input function. And the input function, it is used to ask the user to enter something. So this is the general structure: input, prompt. Prompt is the question here that you want to ask the user to enter, and then input is the keyword. Whatever the user entered will be stored in this variable. So here's an example. Input, what's your name? Whatever the user enters will be stored in name, and then I can print it out. Nice to meet you, and the value of name. Age, what is enter your age? The input will be stored in age, and then I want to output age. Here I'm using plus to display the output, but pay attention, I am doing the indentation myself. You can remove the plus, put a comma, and things will work fine. So now I will close this by an example. I'll do one example, which is the gross pay and everything that we discussed before. So now hours worked, they are equal to, I will ask the user to get me the input. So it's input, enter the hours worked, and I give it a space. So the user enters the hours worked. Rate per hour is equal to, I'll ask the user to input, uh, input, enter the rate per hour. and then similarly I will take it, and then gross pay is equal, as we said before, to the multiplication of them, and then rate. Okay, rate per hour, and then I want to print out gross pay is equal to, and a comma, and then gross pay. Okay, so now this might look correct, but let me print it out. Let me run it, sorry. Enter the hours worked, let's say 40, enter the rate per hour 10, and then it gives me an error. It gives me an error. If you remember, any input from the user is stored as a string. So hours worked, so the 40 that I entered here, which is stored in hours worked, is the string 40, not the number 40. Similarly, for rate per hour, I stored in it the string 10, not the number 10. So I want to transform them from string to an integer so I can multiply them. So remember the casting, so I'll use the keyword int and put what I want to cast in a bracket, and then multiply by the rate per hour int, and then now I have it correct. So now I can run it again, 40 and then 10, and I will get the gross pay equal 400. I will run it again to give you a simple variation. So hours worked is 40, the rate per hour, let's say it is 6.5, enter. This will also give me an error. Why it gave me an error? Because look at it, I have here the input is a string, the error is coming from this line, and it already told me the error is at line 3. I'm transforming a string, which is rate per hour, which has the value 6.5, to an integer. So this doesn't work because 6.5 is not an integer, it's a float. So in this case, I will cast it into a float. It has decimal points. So the hours worked, which I'm assuming to be integer, I cast it to an integer. The rate per hour, which I assume to be float, I cast it into a float. So now this will work regardless of 10.5, and it will work well. Instead of final point, instead of doing the casting here, I can do it immediately when I take the input, which is a better idea so you don't fall into the mistake again. So I know that the hours worked is an integer. Immediately I cast what the user writes. So I enclose the whole thing in int. And I know that the rate is a float. I will immediately put a float. And now I can, is there an error? Yes, I forgot one bracket. So now I run. Okay, so 40, 10.5. I'll get the output to be the same. Okay, so this will hopefully summarize input, output, and all of these. This is an example. You can read it from the slide. Last thing, which is the built-in function, built-in functions. All of these are built-in functions that I can use directly. ABS, I pass it any number, it gives me the absolute value. Max, it gives me the max of the arguments. Min gives me the min of the arguments. Power, it makes x to the power y, although I have an alternative for that, which is x times y. The one that we covered before, it has the same effect as pow. Round, if I want to round a certain number to a certain number of digits. We can use this final one, for example. Um let's assume I run it again, and okay, I worked 39 hours a week, and I was getting paid 10.123456. Okay, so I'll get the gross pay to be 396, and so on and so forth, which is ugly. Let's assume I want to only make it two points after the decimal, two numbers after the decimal. I can use the round. So look, round, you give it the number and then you specify how many digits you want after the decimal. So I will use round, and then okay, round, I want to round the gross pay, true, and I want 2. So now I'm rounding a gross pay. So this is the whole statement. Gross pay, two decimal places after the dot. So 39, 10.123456, and then the answer will be 394.81. To illustrate the max and min, because they are the same, let's assume I want a variable called maximum value. A variable is equal to the max of, and here I can put the numbers that I want. 10, 90, 96, minus 5. Okay, and then I want to display the output. I want to print out the maximum value. So max, which is this function, takes a bunch of values and gives me back the maximum. So in this case, 96 is the maximum. I will store it in maximum value. So enter the hours worked. This is, although we don't need it now, I'm illustrating the other one. Okay, so 96, which is the maximum value among these variables. So you can use them in case you need them. There are, of course, a lot more than these. Here's an example that asks the user to enter his or her weight, and then asks the user to enter his height or her height in meters, and then calculates the BMI and then displays the BMI. As a practice for you, you can go ahead and do it, and then the answer is on the upcoming slide, but please go ahead and try to do it yourself. Thank you, and I'll have another video that concerns mainly string operations. Take care.